Muy buenas noches y bienvenidos nuevamente a la serie internacional 2013 de Tiempo de Mercadeo. Yo soy Carlos Fernando Villa y vamos a continuar en la noche de hoy hablando con Débora Scherer de Columbus 2020, una entidad sin ánimo de lucro de la ciudad de Columbus en el estado de Ohio, que nos está comentando cómo han hecho las cosas, hacia dónde van, qué tipo de empresas han atraído y qué hacen con los estudiantes. Esto lo haremos dentro de unos segundos con Débora Scherer, repito, segundo programa con ella de nuestra serie internacional. Ya regresamos. Débora, buenas noches y bienvenida nuevamente.
Buenas noches.
¿Te hago la pregunta en español o en inglés?
Cualquier quieres.
Okay. Why 2020? I should have asked you that last week, but I'm going to ask it now. Why 2020? 2020 is a perfect vision. Why Columbus 2020? What's the reason for that name?
There's a dual meaning for our name, and one is, you're right, perfect vision. So being an economic development organization, we need to stay very focused on what our activities are. But the other reason is that when our group or organization was founded,
When was that?
it was in 2009 is when it was founded. But it was founded by many of the business people that are located in the Columbus region. And they felt that to have an organization like ours, we really needed to have goals attached to it to be able to look at metrics and understand whether the organization was being successful or not. And these companies are spending a lot of money to make sure that our organization is well funded to do the types of activities that we need to do. And so they put together a 10-year strategy, and this 10-year strategy started in 2010 and ends in 2020.
How did you get the name? Who was the responsible for the name? A company, or did you hire a company to come up with a name? Or it was just people who founded Columbus 2020 who once said, hey, Columbus 2020. How was that? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure who is responsible for the name. I can tell you that we did work with a consulting company who helped us put together the 10-year strategy, and I believe the organization or those individuals that were brought together to put together the strategy itself collectively came up with the name.
Deborah, do you charge anything for your services? When a company comes to Columbus, you charge anything to them? Because you have to get funds from somewhere, not only from donors or people who are involved in the operation, but I don't think you're working for free.
Carlos, that's actually one of the beauties about our
Columbus
organization
2020.
is that we don't charge for our services. For companies who are looking at growing here, all of those services are offered at no charge. And the way that we're able to do that is because we have 300 investors who have invested in our organization. We have about an $8 million budget a year, and those 300 investors are contributing that $8 million to our organization.
As a contribution, not as a pay that they have to make.
That's exactly right. I mean, they are investing in our organization because there are a few reasons. One is because if our community and our region continues to prosper, they will benefit from that as being a company located here. And secondly, some of them are on the services side of the business. And so as we have companies that come in who are looking at expanding, or we're working with companies here, we do make a lot of referrals to our investors. And so they are eventually able to benefit because they're gaining more customers.
I am sure that you have had problems because, I mean, problem-free, I don't know any company that has no problems at all. So I am sure you have had any problems with some of the companies that have been establishing their operations here. And can you give us some examples of those problems? What type of problems have they had?
So I'll give you an example of a company that I worked with from Italy that established themselves here. They were not sure, in some cases, where to go to find good employees. And so they were putting advertisements in the paper, people were applying, and they were hiring individuals. Well, some of those individuals were not the most trustworthy individuals. And so they found that one employee was taking items from the business that shouldn't have been taken. But what we did was we went in and we said, okay, who are you working with? Standard operation in the United States is that you're doing background checks on employees, that you are doing drug testing on employees, that you've put together rules and how the company should operate. And that's something that the company should be doing before they hire employees. Oh, and if that's something that you're interested in pursuing to make sure that you have good employees, allow us to introduce you to some companies that specialize in those activities. And you as a company don't have to do it by yourselves. You can hire services where all of this is done before you're even seeing those potential people to hire.
Do you provide legal advice too?
We don't provide legal advice. However, of the 300 investors that I've spoken about, there are several law firms that are investing in our organization. So we will refer people to reputable law firms that we're aware of, where they can then gain their services.
Yeah, but I mean, Chamber of Commerce or that type of organizations, do you provide that advice, how to go to register before the Chamber of Commerce or any offices, legal offices where they have to register?
I mean, absolutely, we can give them guidelines on what they should be doing. However, it's always important, particularly when doing business in the U.S., that you're engaged with a law firm. So you're making sure that what you're doing is following the rules and the steps that need to take place, not only from establishing a business and things of that nature, but employment laws are very different from country to country. And so you need to and even from state to state, they're different.
Yes.
I mean, in the U.S. case, there's 50 states, which means 50 different sets of laws. And so it's important for companies to understand all of that when they're coming in, so they're not finding themselves with problems later. And that gets to be pretty complex. And so we can advise them of trustworthy and good service providers, but for us to take on that legal work itself is not something that we do.
Okay, Deborah, let's go to a commercial break and we'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
Vamos entonces a otra serie de comerciales y ya estamos de nuevo con ustedes. Ya volvemos. Deborah, let's get into marketing.
Okay.
Do you have a marketing plan?
Absolutely. We have an overall marketing plan that our organization is involved in. We also have, for me working on the international side of the business, each country we're doing different marketing pitches in and approaching the market differently. So yes, we do have a marketing plan.
What was the most difficult part of the marketing plan?
The most difficult part of the marketing plan, in my opinion,
Yes.
is keeping up with the ever-changing world of marketing, whether it's social media or the website or whether it's print material or
You mean
whatever
communication?
it may be, communication, it's ever-changing, and continually being on top of that is very difficult.
Because, I don't think that being an operation like the one you have in Columbus 2020, establishing or, getting objectives, marketing objectives, segmenting the market is not a big deal, is it?
Actually, marketing is a very, very big deal.
Oh, well, marketing, yes, it is a big deal. But when you are going to do the segmentation, I don't think it is a big deal.
Well, I kind of look at it in this way, Carlos, is that you only have a few minutes to grab a potential investor's attention. And so, having the right information available, potentially in their own language, um, talking about the right points that may attract them, which means understanding what your value proposition is,
Yes.
understanding which industries best fit with your region or city or whatever location it may be, understanding that and being able to communicate that in a very short, concise way is extremely important.
It is important, and I understand it is a little difficult because when you're going to say, hey, we're going to attract people from Latin America, well, you have to look at the economic situation of each country, which is not the same. Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Argentina. You know, we all have different type of problems, political problems, economical problems, labor problems, you know, you name it. But, you know, segmenting the market for you is a thing that you should do. And then position, Columbus 2020, competitive speaking. How did you do that?
Well, we didn't do it on our own. We hired experts to help us.
You didn't call me.
You weren't available at that moment. No, we hired local experts who could help us with that and help us with the positioning. And one thing I'll say is we're continuing to tweak that as we see what works and what hasn't worked and where we're getting the best attention. We continue to tweak that. It's not useful if you put it on the shelf and let it accumulate dust. So we're always experimenting on what works.
And what about the communication process? Because, again, you can't say the same thing in the same way to different countries. You have to say the same thing in different ways. Is that so difficult for you?
Well, we have our brand, and we don't deviate from the brand itself.
No, you can't.
Yes, and believe me, our marketing people will not allow us to deviate.
Of course, I understand that.
The brand. But we have to figure out what resonates with whatever target market we're going after. And so we try to be consistent as possible with the brand.
You have to.
While changing the messaging a little bit.
That's what I mean. You have to say the same thing in a different manner, different way, because you can't use the same language, you can use the same words.
Right.
Probably competitive positioning that you have in one country may be different from another country because it's not the same. So that's kind of difficult. But another topic of marketing that we should talk about is distribution. How do you make people to get to you in an easy way?
It depends on the market. Some markets prefer web-based. Some people prefer still telephones. Some prefer email.
Or some prefer to come
Some
here.
prefer print, yes.
Or
So
come here.
what we do, or come in person. So what we try to do is make it available to approach us in any way that the client prefers.
And do you have offices or people in other countries?
Absolutely. We have consultants that we have as part of our team that we've hired in other markets. And we do that in two ways. One is we hire them on a per project basis where there's a defined beginning and end of a project. So maybe we're going to be traveling to a market and they help us for a period before we travel, during our time when we're there, and then after to help us identify potential prospects. But then in other countries, as Japan as example, there are over 150 Japanese companies that are in the Columbus region. It's a very big market.
150?
150.
You're becoming a Japanese citizen.
Honda of America has one of their
Yeah, I know.
manufacturing facilities here, so many of their supplier base have also come. So we have a full-time person year-round that's working with us in Japan to help us with those activities.
But that's only in Japan.
It is in Japan. We also just recently started those activities in Europe. So we are beginning to expand the geographical footprint in which we are having year-round representation.
Once again, we have to go to commercial break. Vamos entonces a otra tanda de comerciales y estamos de nuevo con ustedes para finalizar el programa. Ya volvemos. Deborah, I was going to ask about, the nationality of most companies. You just said Japanese are 150. That makes it the most?
Japanese is by far our largest single
Absolutely.
country investor with
Yeah, when you
over
said
150.
150.
But we have over 600 internationally owned companies that are operating in the Columbus region. If you look at those from a regional perspective, Europe is actually larger than what we see from Japan collectively. But definitely Japan's the largest, UK, Germany, France,
In that order?
Switzerland.
Well, it doesn't make any difference.
It's almost in that order. Most of the European operations are with one or two companies from being, pushed up or down a notch. And because we're working with companies and attracting them on a regular basis, it's consistently changing.
How many from Latin America? So I know Mexicans are the most, but how many from Latin America?
From a company perspective, it's
Yeah.
actually not that many. It's less than 5% that have operations here. We definitely would like to see more.
Bring me here.
We have a large and growing Spanish-speaking population.
Yes, Columbus is a growing Spanish-speaking population, especially Mexicans. That I know. But sports and some activities, commercial activities, are bringing a lot of Latin American people. That's why I'm asking.
We definitely would like to see more, and if we have that opportunity.
Like I said, bring me and I bring you some more.
Absolutely.
So, other than Mexico, what's the other countries?
We have companies that are operating when I'm speaking of Latin America in general, we have Brazilian, we have
Maybe Argentina.
Argentina, Mexico.
From Mexico, I see a lot of restaurants in Ohio, in Columbus, and I see there is a radio station, a Spanish-speaking radio station, and I see that they have a newspaper. Mm-hmm. So I can see that, and maybe anybody can see that, the Latin American population is growing, and their businesses are growing too. So you have a lot to do with that.
It is growing. We welcome that growth. We welcome further growth by bringing new entities in and helping the ones that are already here to continue. And I suspect that in the future we'll see a lot more.
Last week you said that the mayor of Columbus is very well involved in the operation. How is the involvement that he has with Columbus 2020?
Carlos, that's a great question. The mayor is involved when we are bringing companies in. He's always welcoming. He wants to help them be successful here. If the city of Columbus needs to offer financial incentives for it to be very attractive, they're involved in that process. Recently, he also announced a new initiative for the city, which is going to be focused on helping our companies that we have here export more products abroad. And so that is still evolving and exactly what that program will look like. But he is very much focused on globalization, making sure that the companies that are operating here are not only able to operate successfully here now, but they have the resources available to them for them to be operating here from years on, because they have had city support.
That was going to be my final question, because I don't think that Columbus 2020 is only interested in bringing companies here, but helping companies from here to go somewhere else, to go outside, to go out of the United States, to open new markets. Is that part of the job that you are doing?
Absolutely. The Columbus was recently chosen by the Brookings Institute, which is a think tank in Washington, D.C. We were chosen as one region of the U.S. to begin a metropolitan export strategy. And so the mayor was very excited about that. Our CEO, Kenny McDonald, was very excited. And so we are now moving forward with not only helping companies come in, but making sure that they are globalizing to be able to have a sustainable future.
How many companies from other states within the United States?
There are 16 in total that have been chosen to go through this program so far.
They are here already. I mean, they have established the businesses here yet.
There have been 16 other cities around the U.S. that have been chosen to go through this pilot. We're now in the process of identifying those companies that would be good candidates for going through the program and learning how to sell their products into other markets.
Okay, Deborah, you see that time in television flies, and our time is up. So we have to say goodbye and thank you, and I have to wish you the very best, and I hope you bring me here to Columbus.
Well, gracias para la oportunidad para hablar contigo hoy.
Oh, thank you. Y ya ustedes ven, pues, como una empresa como Columbus 2020 está atrayendo compañías aquí a la ciudad y está atrayendo compañías para que exporten y puedan abrir operaciones en un mundo globalizado. Esperamos que sigan con nosotros en la serie internacional y por el momento, muchísimas gracias y una feliz noche.
So being an economic development organization, we need to stay very focused on what our activities are. But the other reason is that when our group or organization was founded,
When was that?
it was in 2009 is when it was founded. But it was founded by many of the business people that are located in the Columbus region. And they felt that to have an organization like ours, we really needed to have goals attached to it to be able to look at metrics and understand whether the organization was being successful or not. And these companies are spending a lot.
Muy buenas noches y bienvenidos nuevamente a la serie internacional 2013 de Tiempo de Mercadeo. Yo soy Carlos Fernando Villa y vamos a continuar en la noche de hoy hablando con Deborah Scherer de Columbus 2020, una entidad sin ánimo de lucro de la ciudad de Columbus en el estado de Ohio, que nos está comentando cómo han hecho las cosas, hacia dónde van, qué tipo de empresas han atraído y qué hacen con los estudiantes. Esto lo haremos dentro de unos...
Work with a consulting company who helped us put together the 10-year strategy, and I believe the organization or those individuals that were brought together to put together the strategy itself collectively came up with the name.
Deborah, do you charge anything for your services? When a company comes to Columbus, you charge anything to them? Because you have to get funds from somewhere, not only from donors or people who are involved in the operation, but I don't think you're working for free.
Carlos, that's actually one of the beauties about our
Columbus
organization
2020.
is that we don't charge a lot of money to make sure that our organization is well funded to do the types of activities that we need to do. And so they put together a 10-year strategy, and this 10-year strategy started in 2010 and ends in 2020.
How did you get the name? Who was the responsible for the name? A company, or did you hire a company to come up with a name? Or it was just people who founded Columbus 2020 who once said, hey, Columbus 2020. How was that? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure who is responsible for the name. I can tell you that we did.
Segundos con Débora Scherer, repito, segundo programa con ella de nuestra serie internacional. Ya regresamos. Débora, buenas noches y bienvenida nuevamente.
Buenas noches.
¿Te hago la pregunta en español o en inglés?
Cualquier quieres.
Okay. Why 2020? I should have asked you that last week, but I'm going to ask it now. Why 2020? 2020 is a perfect vision. Why Columbus 2020? What's the reason for that name?
There's a dual meaning for our name, and one is, you're right, perfect vision.